think I believe strongly that science has a contribution to make in this area, science and scientists, but my own experience strongly leads me to believe that we can do that much more effectively if we work with producers and we understand each other's point of view. I mean, we've had some very successful projects where we've worked collaboratively with industry. There's nothing worse for a scientist than getting to the end of a project and hearing someone say, well, it's great science, but it's not really relevant to us, and we don't want that experience. We feel we've got something to offer, and it would be nice if we could convince industry of that also, and clearly it's easier to do that if industry's helping define the problems and thinking with us about what some of the solutions might be. Water, the area of water. We're interested in trying to reduce water use in irrigation, and we had a very interesting project funded by Horticulture Link a few years ago. Within the UK horticultural industry, there were probably a dozen growers involved, 2 or 3 research providers, including East Malling, where we are today, and 3 or 4 equipment companies that made environmental sensing equipment and some novel robotics. And at the end of it, we delivered a new way, effectively, of, well, I think probably more than halving irrigation use from standard irrigation systems currently in use in the industry. And that's a big achievement, because water's a real battleground and will continue to be so. Most of the countries that produce food for the UK are water scarce. What water there is has to go farther. We need more crop per drop. And it's also true in many parts of Britain as well, and our expectations are that under climate change it certainly won't become any easier to produce food, and indeed other crops as well. The wetter areas will get wetter and the drier areas will get drier, but even in the UK, which is somewhere that you wouldn't necessarily choose for a hot, dry holiday, in more years than not, farmers are forced to irrigate. Even crops that are not routinely irrigated, like wheat, if they receive irrigation, even in average summers, you can see substantial yield increases as a result of that. So crop yields are nearly always limited by water availability. I mean, for me, it's a very positive experience. I value the opportunity to work with the company. I think this is a company that has high environmental standards and clearly a strong sense of corporate social responsibility. And I think that working together in the past and training and in some research, we've made some good progress. There's strong recognition that not just our own university, but the other universities who work in the company have a lot to contribute. And I get a very good feeling from it. And last night I talked to people from throughout the business, people that I haven't necessarily met before, about what our aims and aspirations are, and they're genuinely committed to those kinds of things. Clearly, the company's interested in the bottom line, but at the same time, they can see the necessity of being able to demonstrate to the customers that they're not wasting water or fertilizer, and they do care about biodiversity, and they're helping society make some quite difficult decisions about the way our food should be produced, and to some extent how the food system of the future should be structured, how it should operate. And those are really very, very crucial decisions to make, because we're having to feed more people with less, climate's changing, and many of the societies around the world traditionally that have, let's say, a predominantly vegetable-based diet, are anxious now to eat more and eat different things, and much of that is very resource demanding. So agriculture is under pressure, and it's very, very good for us to be involved with a group of very successful growers and a company who are successful in this area already, but aim to continue to be successful under these difficult times, and have a recognition that there are ways ahead, and that potentially we and other researchers can contribute. I think our growers are among the best in the world. Some of the people I interact with here in this organisation are absolutely outstanding. Their performance is exemplary, and they're obviously not only operating in this country, they're growing overseas, and by and large the impacts of what they do are positive in a whole range of senses. I think there are some parts of the world, and I always point to Australia, where people need to be resilient because they're living on the edge climatically. And you see, in my experience, very impressive growers and good links between science and the food producers. There are some very good examples of that, and I think this little partnership driven here by the Agronomy Group is a very good example of that. It's relatively new. I think we're having to think again in this country about how growers receive advice, become aware of best practice. I mean, traditionally we had an advisory service, and that's gone. It's been replaced by other things. And I think this model, which is developing here, can be a very impressive model. The industry is receptive. I think we need to get UK science sorted to effectively address the requirements of the industry. I mean, that may sound a bit of a strange statement, but actually, agricultural science has not always been the most popular subject with potential undergraduate students, and it's undergraduate students who fund universities. Fundamentally, that's an important part of the funding model. If we don't get the undergraduates in those areas, some of these disciplines, which are considered essential in agriculture, things like soil science, they start to fade away a bit. There aren't many professional soil scientists working in universities. So I think one of the things that's happened here, to the credit of the people that are driving this business, is that there's a recognition that disciplines other than agricultural sciences have a lot to contribute. So ecologists, for example, work on biodiversity. They may not think of themselves as necessarily agricultural scientists, but they understand how insect-plant interactions happen, understand population biology. So I think this supply chain can call on a lot of expertise, but people who potentially have a science contribution to make need to be made aware of what the demands are.